I want to talk to you about the Sunday Scaries.
What is my role in this whole thing? And what can I change? And that's actually empowering. And the future is based on assumptions that may or may not be accurate.
One of the ways you can help know what type of culture you're creating is to ask.
It becomes political. How do I get my way without making myself vulnerable? As followers of Jesus, to me, it begins with our trust of Him, because what He really wants is our heart, and He is the one that is trustworthy.
If you lead team members, you can create culture.
You want to do good, you want to be good, you want to inspire good, and that's the raw material.
Tom?
Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, doing good.
Good to be back in the office?
Yeah, it is.
I'm excited for this episode. I want to talk to you about the Sunday Scaries. Do you know about the Sunday Scaries?
No.
So the Sunday Scaries is it's a phenomenon that's plaguing a lot of America.
Really?
And it is where you are in a position or role or job that on Monday you dread.
Oh.
So Sunday, you get the Sunday Scaries, which is this feeling of impeding anxiety, doom, gloom, whatever. And that impacts your perception of your work, right? Because you start Monday hoping it's Friday to get to the weekend, to get to the Sunday Scaries, to get back to Monday.
Yeah.
And I think that's how a lot of people operate.
Oh.
Right? I would imagine if we were to poll a lot of individuals listening, there's, I would say, quite a few people that probably experience the Sunday Scaries. And then you get into Monday again, wanting to move until it's Friday.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'm curious on your diagnosis of that.
Oh.
I think there's a part of that where it's maybe your own, there's something going on with yourself that I think you can address. But then from an organizational perspective, as someone who's leading a group of people who might be experiencing that feeling on a Sunday, how can you cultivate a culture or environment where that's not, where it's almost like Sunday anticipation, but it's good.
Yeah.
It's like bringing life on a Monday rather than dread and, time to go to Starbucks to load up on caffeine so that I feel good enough to make it through Monday.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear both sides
Yeah.
of the equation, as the individual who's experiencing it and as the leader who might be leading team members who are feeling that. Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah.
I don't, just initially, I'm not sure how unique it is to today's culture relative to, before.
Yeah, sure.
And the reason I say that is I think, to me, the core issue, and both it's the cause and it's the effect, has to do with living in the present. Because when we don't live in the present, it's inevitable that we get trapped, because the reality is there is nothing but the present.
Right.
The past you have nothing to do with. It's gone. So you get up to Sunday and it doesn't matter what happened the week before. Your anxiety is anticipating what's yet to come. But if you back it up, what the tendency is to never live in the present. I remember an example of this when I was in college at CU Boulder, which doesn't have anything to do with anything except for that's how weird I was. I remember, it's a 4-year program, and so you have it on different levels. You can have a Sunday for a whole year. You know, so you're thinking, well, it's my
Yeah.
freshman year, and I can't wait till I get to my sophomore
Oh, yeah.
year.
Yeah, for
Or
sure.
it's and then you can do that with college.
Yeah.
I'm in college, and I can't wait to get done with college so I can go into my profession. Now I got my first job. So that phenomenon of us just basically the relationship to the past and the present and the future, to me, is sort of the core realm. So when I was in college, I remember thinking, what if, you know, because sometimes I'd say, kind of in praying, Lord, just get me through this. And what if He actually gave me what I asked? So basically, my entire college career would probably be less than a half hour.
That's right. Fly
Because
right
it would
by.
be go, get me to this, and then
Yeah.
get me to that,
Yeah.
and get me to that. And so therefore, I would is the goal just getting to the other side? Now, sometimes, so here's in the workplace or in navigating as you lead others that are in it. Number one is, like all of my stuff is saying, build from the inside out. If it doesn't work at home, don't take it on the road. So a lot of managers or leaders don't build from their own inside. They're not living it. They're actually dreading having to talk to the guys about them dreading their job.
Yeah.
And then they're dreading going home and telling their wife
Yeah.
how stinky their job was. So it starts with in the middle. So and living in the present is a huge challenge always.
For everyone. Yeah.
But it's exacerbated by, I think, like social media and all of the different facets of that. And
Yeah.
because it's continually, it's in motion. You know, it's even doing a selfie. It's not like I've done a selfie, now I'm done. Now I'm going to try to get it better, and I'm going to try to, and I'm dreading, you know, so it's built in to this way we live that is disconnected from who we are. And so the way that, you know, so how do we then lead in that? Well, number one is be aware of yourself. What's going on with you? How do you feel about Monday? There's a song by, this is a different era, but is Mamas and Papas. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
It was big in the 70s.
Yeah.
And one of their hit songs was Monday, Monday. Monday, Monday. And it's talking about how hard Monday is. I dread Monday.
So the Sunday Scaries were,
So that's
they were back in the 70s. Yeah.
So if you got the lyrics of
Yeah.
Monday, Monday, you'd see that it was, and so the Mamas and Papas were the most popular singing group in the 70s.
Yeah.
And they lived in L.A. and but they would travel and they wrote about wishing they could be back there. And so in the 70s, a lot of the focus was on when you thought about the scares, it was a whole era that, you know, a guy named Barry McGuire, another person you've never heard of, but he had a #1 hit song called The Eve of Destruction.
Okay.
And he talks about that we're living in the eve of destruction because of nuclear holocaust. And, you know, when I was growing up in that era, you know, we had to practice doing air raids and get underneath our desk when the siren went off. And that was just all across the country.
Yeah.
Because the imminence of the nuclear holocaust was always there. Now, if you take that picture, fast forward it to now, it's not nuclear holocaust necessarily because everything's moving so fast. You don't even have time to contemplate, is the world going to blow up? But it's the same principle, is that in that case, we were living in the future. There's the future fear. What's going to happen? And even to connect more abstract things is the movie, which you may or may not have remembered, Back to the Future.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic.
Great,
Yeah,
classic.
yeah.
Well, look at what they're doing
Yeah.
there. They're going back to the future in order to live in the past with their knowledge of the present. And so you get this disjointed existence. So ideally, the concept that that we want in both in managing and living and so on, and it's a fairly simple principle, but it's congruence. We want the outside to match the inside. We want what we're thinking in advance to be lived out in the present, and the things in the past we need to be able to let go of those.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the question of how do you, as a leader, how do you help people navigate that, starting with yourself. So, and if you do that, and that principle again, self-awareness, if you're doing it, if you can't do it with you, what makes you think you can do it with
Right.
your workforce?
Yeah.
And so what happens is, therefore, as the leader, I tend to disassociate with the today. And I'm thinking about their future or their past. Instead of starting with me, here's what I'm thinking, then being able to connect with the people that you're working with and understand, so, I'm freaking out about Monday. How are you doing? Are you, yeah, I am too. Have you created an environment that it's safe even? That's
Yeah.
another piece of looking at the future. It's jaundiced by our view of the present. It's scary. What if I say to my boss, I don't even want to work.
Yeah.
Well, is the boss going to go, well, let's talk about it. Tell me what you're thinking. What's going on? Most likely, unfortunately, it's like in the back of your mind, boss guy is going, this guy's out of here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't babysit you guys.
Oh, right, yeah.
You guys have got to get it together. So as far as a leader, are you, we talked about before, transparency and authenticity. Am I and where you work, I have seen, that process actually, be used where your CEO is very transparent about his own stuff. Well, that then allows you, if you're on the scary thing, the Sunday scares, you're able to talk, to get it out there.
Yeah.
It loses a lot of its power in the light. Its power is in the darkness, and it gets bigger. When my son was little, he was like maybe 8 or 9. He was afraid of the dark. He was all the way up. And I remember one night I was putting him to bed, and I'd always go in and kind of comfort him and so on, but I'd already put him to bed, and he was crying, "Daddy, Daddy." And so I came in, and it was a little bit, if you're a parent and you're trying to finally get the kid down, it's a little aggravating.
Yeah,
like,
right.
oh,
Again?
is this, is he working me?
Yeah.
And I could tell that he was really scared. And so I came in and sat on the edge of his bed, and I said, well, Nick, what are you afraid of? He said, Daddy, I'm afraid. And I said, what are you afraid of? And he kind of nods towards the corner of the room, and I look over there with him, and I said, well, what do you see there? He says, Dad, Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Okay.
And so, and I said, oh,
Yeah.
no wonder you're afraid. Tyrannosaurus Rex is scary. Yes, and he grips me, and I said, what are you afraid of? He says, Dad, I'm afraid he's going to eat me.
Yeah.
Well, no wonder you're afraid. So I held him and I said, so let's keep our eyes on Tyrannosaurus Rex. And I leaned over and opened the door slowly to the room. And as I did that, the light came in the room, and it illuminated the Tyrannosaurus Rex in the corner. And you could just, he was scared. And then as the light came, and I said, what do you see? And it's my coat hanging on the door. Now, the key principle there is if I, as a parent in this situation, if I would have just said, I'm not even going in there, shut up, go to sleep, there's nothing in there. Guess what happens to Tyrannosaurus Rex? Now he is alone. He wants to be with his dad, his safety. But now it's him and Tyrannosaurus Rex, and he feels abandoned. So then had I gone in and reprimanded him, then he has another dilemma. I don't want my daddy to not like me, but I'm really afraid, And as I talked to him about it, I says, now if the Tyrannosaurus Rex was real, then we would change our behavior immediately.
Yeah.
We would get out of there. So sometimes the Tyrannosaurus Rex is real.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it might be in the workplace where this is going on. It might be abuse. It might be all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not just suck it up, quit worrying about it. And a lot of bosses come in and say, I don't have time to deal with your stuff, or
Right.
then it goes to litigation or whatever. But the fact is, you work back from there. There was contact. I was with him. The closer, the more dangerous it got, the closer in we got. So same thing. Instead of running from it or putting a barrier up, you say, let me. I'm going to come into your world. Tell me what you're thinking. What's going on with you? Now, in a bigger organization, the principle of all of this is in a cascading manner.
Yeah.
Things start at the top and they cascade down. But they don't cascade just in concept. They have to cascade in practice. So one of the phrases I use is that we lead from the top down, measure from the bottom up. And so as I'm the CEO or I'm the leader or whatever it is, I have these concepts, but I live them.
Right.
And then the lived concept cascades now. It's not just the HR department putting out a memo saying, here's our new mission statement, good. Well, where do I what pile do I put that in? But it's actually, again, back to the question, the scareds, or whatever,
Yeah,
how
Sunday
you call
scaries,
it.
yeah.
So how do you deal with it? You start with yourself, and then you engage in dialogue, and you engage in not you trying to straighten them out, but you helping to remove barriers that allow them to straighten it out. So let me stop there and scratch a little bit of the itch.
Yeah, I think, I love that you acknowledge that sometimes the Sunday scaries are real.
Right.
That there are realities where it's like the environment that you're going into on Monday is a real issue, a real problem, and it should be addressed in that way. And then there's the other part of, the working on oneself, and like maybe this is just the coat hanging up on a hanger, and there's something going on in me that's creating, whether it's the influence of technology, right? I'm heaping anxiety on myself before I'm going into work, and that's not work. That's me bringing things into my work. One of the things that I'm learning kind of through this process when we're talking about anxiety, I love how you were talking about anxiety is always a future focused thing. It's not that how do we living in the present in today's day and age, and it has always been a challenge. It's a discipline to live in today's day and age. What are some things that have worked for you that help focus and recenter yourself on the present so that you're not constantly spinning the wheels of like all the what ifs and worries about whatever, work, relationship. I mean, even if you're worrying about relationship, that ends up cascading into your Monday.
Right.
And so how do you ground yourself back to the present
Present.
as a means to working on yourself to help with the Sunday scaries moving into Monday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great question. I think some of it is just cognitive, where you're aware of the phenomenon of wanting to live in the present or the past. So there's kind of two levels or two realms of that. One is the cognitive, where you just analyze, in a sense, what's going on, what is in the corner, is there light that I can shed? So you're embracing the what looks to be the cause of the fear.
Yeah.
Because, by the way, all of these are fear-based.
Totally.
So I don't want to think about the future because I'm afraid of the future. It's unknown. It's scary. It could be really bad. We tend to not migrate in that direction. I mean, we tend to not migrate and say, but on the other hand, it could be really good. It could, in fact, there's some signs here that, man, tomorrow, I can't wait for tomorrow because of Bing. But it's a little bit of looking at and discerning the present and the future and the past. So that's a cognitive, something you actually sit down and think about. And you begin to you enhance your self-awareness.
Yeah.
So there's a little phrase that I use that's helpful for me in terms of living in the present. And it's notice what you notice. So if you exercise that, so like in this room, there are a million things that you could notice. You could see this globe, you could see this cup, you could look at this and that, always going on. There's things, So one of the ways that you can be aware, if you notice what you notice, you migrate, you move toward what you focus on. So if I'm focusing on the future, then I'm going to look at things through that lens that could be scary, that says, you know what, this future is too scary. Like back in my day with Barry McGuire and that song, The Eve of Destruction. I mean, the future was really scary.
Yeah.
So therefore, the tendency was not to embrace it and to look more closely to say, what can we do? It was to either, run from it, hide from it. And like even we were taught as kids, when the siren goes off, you get under your desk.
Your desk, yeah.
I mean, you think about how crazy that is. Like, we got nuclear bombs coming down, and we're underneath our desk. So a big piece of the fuel that keeps us from navigating that is ignorance. We have wrong data. Our fear, like the Tyrannosaurus Rex. So one of the things that we can do to live in the present more is to shed light on it. What are the things that are putting it in the darkness? And awareness. So notice what you notice. What I tend to notice is the negative.
Totally.
And
with most people.
Yeah. And you move towards that.
Yeah.
You go, by the time you get through Monday, you're thinking, why even live? I hate my job.
Right.
I hate my boss. I hate my wife. Why? Well, because I got in a fight with my wife on the phone. My boss just said, you got to suck it up. I'm not making enough money right now. My kids are... Blah, blah, blah. So where's my energy? It goes towards the future, and the future is based on assumptions that may or may not be accurate. My assumption is my wife hates me. Why? Because she didn't talk to me today when I left. Okay, let's look at that. Is that legitimate? Is that premise for the future? They say, well, why do you hate going home? Well, my wife hates me. Well, why do you think, so one of the things that you've heard me talk about is the 5 whys. Asking why 5 times.
Yep.
Well, that's a part of living in the present.
Yeah.
It gets you to refocus. So using the Tyrannosaurus Rex analogy, so sometimes you just need to open the door. and let the light in. And so that's again the self-awareness part of, notice what you notice.
Right.
Okay. And the cognitive. So there's that part.
Yeah.
Then there's the emotional part, that you're aware of what you're feeling. And the feelings tend to follow the cognitive. They tend to be stirred by what you perceive as truth. I am afraid, now back to the room with my son, I'm afraid of what I perceive is in the corner.
Yeah.
I haven't really examined it fully, and I'm not likely to, because what I've created in my head is so scary, and I feel it in my body. I want to hide, and I'm fearing for my actual existence,
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? Well, it's always this interaction between the cognitive, thinking, analyzing, and so on. Notice what you notice, ask why you do it. There's that going on, and that, if you think about it, investigative reporter, as if there are those anymore.
Right.
Or investigator in general.
Yeah.
You begin to look at the facts. You uncover it. So, well, it looked like this guy did this, and did he actually do it? Well, as we dug further, he didn't do it. This guy did it. So we have that kind of tenacity about our own thing. Not what we tend to be more motivated is towards somebody else. In systems thinking, the two questions you ask is, what is my role in the dysfunction, and what can I change in my role? Tendency is to do just the opposite. What's your role in it,
totally.
and what can I do to change you?
Yeah.
So if you're an employee or you're a member of a team, your tendency will be to say, my boss is a total idiot, and how can I get him to, or her, to quit being an idiot? Instead of saying, as a system, what is my role in this whole thing?
Yeah.
And what can I change?
Yeah.
And that's actually empowering. So another factor back to the question about how do you deal with it, is that as we are more aware of what's actually going on, back to it may be Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah.
It may be that your boss really is a tyrant. But again, you, rather than focusing on how can I change him, and one of the ways we tend to do that in a dysfunctional organization is what we call triangulation. In other words, rather than me going to my boss and saying, here's what's going on, I go to my coworker and tell them what is wrong with the boss. And maybe you even get that coworker to say, could you talk to the boss on my behalf?
Or get them on your side.
Or get 'em
like
on
the
your
water
side.
cooler
And
gossip. Now you're starting to breed some.
Another characteristic of the dysfunction is, besides triangulation, is what they call herding. So you get together as a herd. So now it comes, a bunch of us have noticed.
Us against them kind of mentality.
Which bunch?
Yeah.
Who? Is that you? Is
Interesting.
No, it's thousands of people out there. So that those are things that So back to the idea of how do you do it as a manager or as a leader. You begin with yourself, then you're present with your people. So in other words, I bring my real self to the extent that I'm aware of my real self.
Sure.
And that's a problem, because a lot of times we're not. We don't realize, like our body language, how we're sitting there, well, what do you got? What's wrong with you? Tell me, be open with me.
And you're like, I'm so intimidated, I don't want to say anything. I'm about to lose my job.
I think you look great, boss. I like your new shirt.
Exactly it, yeah. With the, and even in that story with you and your son, it was interesting. There was community there that helped create awareness of what is real. How important is it for leaders, but even just individuals going into those moments? How is it critical? Is it like mission critical that you do this in community? Because I often think, I'm thinking of myself and like, I don't know if it's a T-Rex or not.
Yeah.
And even with the light on, it's sometimes hard to,
Yep.
even when I'm processing it out to myself, and,
Yeah.
I am noticing what I'm noticing. And sometimes it's even, I'm so in deep, it's like
Yeah.
I don't really even know when the light's on.
Right.
Hence, I'm just thinking, it's like, yeah, gosh, it's like when I bring someone in from the outside, they're almost able to just point and say, oh, that's just a
Right.
coat. Like, no, that's not what you think it is.
Yeah.
And so just from your own experience, how important is that process to be doing with trusted
Yep.
community?
Huge. The one of the other concepts in this that we talk about is Stephen Covey's book, Speed of
Yeah.
Trust, which
Yep.
we've gone
Great
through
book.
that. So building an environment of trust, and in terms of self-awareness and self-regulation, it's imperative that you have other people with you.
Yeah.
And again, that doesn't mean get a herd. It means it's
Totally.
it's from the top down. Does the and so let's just say you're in an environment where that sounds great, but my boss is not at all self-aware and is basically treats everybody poorly and is very intimidating and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Now there you are, and now the whole team is afraid of the boss, and who I'm not going to talk to him. You talk to him. No, I'm not going to talk to him.
Yeah.
Well, who's going to talk to him? Well, let's get everybody together and we'll rush his office, and have a insurrection.
What is it called? Yeah, like a coup. Was it called
Coup
a coup?
d'etat?
Yeah, you do like a coup. Yeah.
We'll just take
We'll
over.
just take it over. Yeah.
So the community part, like back to that analogy with my son, the thing that allowed him, if let's say that I wasn't the kind of dad who went through that. I was the kind of dad that would come in and take off my belt and say, shut up, and there's nothing in the corner. Grow up, you little weenie. Big boys don't cry. In fact, if you say anything else, I'm going to whip your little butt. Well, think of now, and that unfortunately is more common
Yeah.
than the other. And it may not be a physical threat, but it's a just, hey, look, we got work to do here. If you can't hang with it,
Yeah.
then get out of here. And sometimes, again, this all gets intermixed. Sometimes the boss needs to just confront the behavior of the employee.
Sure.
But if it's just a heavy-handed top down, and so the boss typically, you treat other people the way you treat yourself. That's another principle. That if you look around and you find that you're treating people poorly, stop, back off, and say, how am I treating me? I am saying to me now, oh, shut up. The person on the inside is going, I am afraid. Daddy, and there's no daddy. Who's your daddy at that point? There's no daddy.
Right.
Or my daddy's a tyrant.
Yeah.
So now what do I do? And so that can be in your family, can be in your life. As followers of Jesus, to me, it begins with our trust of him, because what he really wants is our heart, and he is the one that is trustworthy. But so in the same principle, going, if you're the leader, and so how do you even know what kind of environment are you creating? Well, that's a part of your job, is to find out.
Yeah.
How do you perceive me? You're making yourself vulnerable. You could come into this your leadership team, and you could say, well, how am I doing?
Yeah.
And hardly anybody does that.
Yeah. I don't want to pass over that.
Yeah.
Because I think you're right. There's not a lot of people that do that at all. So go back to that real quick, just sink back into there. One of the ways you can help know what type of culture you're creating is to ask.
Yes,
And that's super vulnerable.
it is.
Really powerful.
Yep.
And you've seen that.
Yep.
You've seen that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's vulnerable on a lot of different ways, you know, and a lot of it back to examining your premises. So the premise there is that if you're the boss and you let them see you sweat, that you lose your ability to
Right.
control them or to motivate them. As Deming, we've talked about before, his whole focus was eliminating obstacles. So what keeps you from feeling free? Well, here's what keeps me. You know, whenever I bring anything up, I get, you know, reprimanded or whatever. So it's a ongoing adjusting, but you have to be secure yourself
Yeah.
in order to. Why would I open myself to all of these peons? You know, internally you're thinking, or maybe this guy is a pain for me. This guy's good. I'm not going to open myself to him. In fact, I don't have time. So unless the leader sees the value of caring for the people and helping them, you know, grow and so on, the more common thing is, hey, this business is business.
Right.
You know, we don't have time to deal with your stuff. And it may be, back to the reality of Toronto Surf, it may be that's partially true. Right now, we can't talk about this, but can we meet tomorrow morning? Can we, you know, well, if you're not, if your culture has not been cultivated, and you find out the boss wants to meet you in the morning, instead of it being something you're going, oh, this should be good because I can kind of, I feel safe and I'll be able to tell him what I'm thinking. How often it is for me in working with organizations that I'll say and advise as a consultant, have you talked to your boss or have you talked to him? Oh, heck no.
Why would I do that?
Why would I do that?
Put my job on the line.
Yeah. You know, so then there's two sides. Now, what do I do as the employee? Do I just, and typically I just suck it up, and now it becomes political. How do I get my way without making myself vulnerable? And then on the other side, how do I get my employees or my team to do what I want them to do without ticking them off and having them leave? So, but it comes back to your observation about community, you know, so that there is a sense of we're all in this together. But it takes time and it takes focus. In my experience, that doesn't grow without intentionality. You know, and that's good news because it's not a magic wand that and you see an organization that's got a good team culture. I promise you that has happened because the leadership has experienced it and believes in it and is putting it into practice. But even that makes you vulnerable. You say, we're going to, because you might be 2 steps into the thing and you're thinking, this is a bad idea because all they got is negative stuff to say. And I don't have time to hear it. So that's the end of our openness. From now on, you know, here's the deal. And that's tempting if you're the leader to just say, because it takes emotional investment to actually engage and be in the present with people.
And time.
And time.
Sometimes resources.
Yeah. But if you look at it, back to you move to what you focus on, let's say you really love your kids. And you really do. And so what you find yourself doing is actually can't wait to get home to play with them. And the weekends are a delight. You're not fearing Monday, but you're enjoying today. Well, if that's so you move to what you focus on, and if in your team, in your organization, what are you focusing on? There's a million things you could focus on, and it doesn't mean that if you focus on one thing, you're not able to focus on anything else. It's being aware, because what we need to do is to force rank
Yeah.
our things we notice.
Yeah.
It may be. I noticed that the door was painted white. Okay, that's something I noticed, but I didn't notice that there was a Tyrannosaurus Rex in the corner. Now that I've recognized that Tyrannosaurus Rex is there, I have no idea what color the door is. So it's there are priorities.
Totally.
But if we're aware, we're processing all the time, that we don't give every thought the same amount of weight. And that's where the social media thing is huge, where that is predominant.
Yeah, we're bombarded with
Bombarded.
all
And
sorts
you
of.
have you look at somebody's phone, and they'll have 10,000 pictures. Now, what are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
You're never going to look back through them. Although it's amazing, you go, and you're blowing through 100 at a time.
Yeah.
And what do you even have them for? You don't even need a memory, but you got to remember where you put them. So you've got this overload, and so. And that's where you live from the inside out. What's going on your inside for you? And if that's neglected, then you're going to, why should I give you my time? I don't give me my time.
Yeah. One of the things that you were saying that was, it just like connected the dots for me, right? I'm coming to this conversation saying, how can I minimize the Sunday scaries so that Monday work feels exciting and as a leader? But I'm almost forgetting about what happens when you have the Sunday scaries for your family, for your kids, for your wife. It's like that when my focus, right? When I'm focused on the T-Rex, I'm forgetting about everything else that's really there. And so it's like when I'm going and I'm having Sunday scaries about work and I'm stressing over work, I'm forgetting about time with my wife, time with my kids, time with my community, things that I do enjoy doing on the weekends. And so it works both ways. It's like, it's a double-edged sword in that like it hurts what's actually happening right there on the weekend, and it hurts my perception of going in on a Monday.
It's a double jeopardy.
Yeah.
You're getting it. You're screwing this up.
Totally.
And that being screwed up screws this up.
Yeah.
And then it doubles down.
And that time is so precious.
Yep.
Those weekends are so precious, and it's so fascinating. One of the other things too, I'd love to kind of go back to is when we do it in community, specifically if you're doing it inside the work culture, how do you prevent against that herding mentality, right? Because it could, if there's like openness and transparency, that can turn into like everyone's hating the boss now. It's like it just creates this. But I think even that has to do with focus.
It does.
If we're all coming together to feel good about hating the boss, we're missing the point. If we're all coming together to challenge one another's perception of reality, the focus stays on our own perception. And I think that creates a healthy community, because now you're pushing each other to see things differently, see things as they are. And you might be right. Maybe we come together and realize that this is really a bad situation. What are we going to do about it? But and that's where that whole transparency comes in, and being able to go to the boss and things like that. One of the things I'd love to kind of end with from the leadership perspective, and you talked about this from the idea of it cascades down and then you measure up. How can you as a leader catalyze the culture that you want so that your employees aren't feeling that way coming in? So I think there's a reality of like, maybe it's kind of a not great situation, and so there's vulnerability in saying, hey, I'm feeling the Sunday scaries. But how can you as a leader, the one that really shifts and changes culture, how can you transpire that change so that that conversation isn't really a reality anymore. People love coming into work. You love coming into work.
Yeah.
How do you change that? How do you catalyze that?
Well, and I think one of the key things is realizing that you can't do that for somebody else as a leader. You back to Demings. You can. What are the obstacles that are keeping people? And so, and this is where Deming stuff is so profound. His assumption, which goes against the traditional management thing, his assumption is that people want to do good. People want to feel good about their job.
Yeah. Yes.
The traditional management thing is they don't. And a good manager is one who gets people to do stuff that you, as the manager, want them to do that they don't want to do. And so you do all these different things and so on. And instead, you flip it and saying, the assumption, back to assumptions, is that you want to do good. People come to work they want to love their work. And you'll find where you have organizations that people do love their work, it's happened because of leadership. That somebody is aware of that, and it's not mechanistic where if you do one then you get two, but it's a cultural, it's a base view of your people and yourself. Do you want to do good? Sometimes I'd like to blow everybody up. I'd like to, okay, well that's real. Pay attention to that. Why do you want to blow everybody up? Because when I try to get my way and I don't get it, then I just get frustrated. Okay, so why do you get frustrated? Because they don't hear me. I try to tell them and they don't hear me. Why don't they hear you? I never thought of that. Maybe it's because I yell at them. Could be. I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah.
But the underlying assumption is you want to do good, you want to be good, you want to inspire good.
Yeah.
And that's the raw material. Well, if I'm coming in as a leader with the exact opposite, you're an idiot, you're lazy, you just are here trying to get by, et cetera, et cetera. And that's my assumption. So I'm not going to invest in you. Just do your damn job. Well, okay, put the brakes on there. Let's back up a little bit. How do I know what is motivating you? Does someone pay attention to me? If my boss ever ask me how you're doing?
Right.
How am I? No. Well, guess what's going to look like another rung over or down or wherever you're situated on your org chart? Well, I don't have time for her.
Sure. Yeah.
Because no one has time for me. And it doesn't mean that's part of your job is to model it. And model the whole thing. You can't just model saying, all right, here I figured it out, everybody needs a longer lunch period. Well, maybe, but that probably has more to do with Susie's eating disorder. So you're involving individually in it. So come back at that.
Yeah, one of the things that I think people resonate a lot with is the default, I can't change culture because my boss isn't that way.
Yeah.
And I think there's, if you lead team members, you can create culture, irregardless of what's coming from the top. It might be more difficult, as you've experienced. It's certainly going against the current, no doubt.
Sure.
But I think there's an empowering piece of you can still lead in a way that's full of vulnerability and integrity, caring deeply about the other person. Am I removing obstacles out of your way so that you can do good work here? And I think that would be, what a unique opportunity to create a subculture in the bigger culture because of the way that you lead. And you can certainly do it. It's just more challenging. I think for me it is definitely both, right? So I'm a leader of teams, but there's also the reality of the Sunday scaries. And so it's like going in, having community to recognize what is real, what is not, finding places to get excited about my work. I think because there are plenty of things, it's like, yeah, I love this, and so cling to that. And then it's like, it is so easy in high growth culture to feel like setting aside time to just talk to your people it just feels like it's halting momentum or it's not productive. And yet that could be the most productive thing you do all day, is to have that conversation and invite that level of vulnerability, because you are also starting with that vulnerability.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
That's right. And I think it's always the hardest and it begins with yourself.
Yeah.
Always.
Yes, always.
You know, and so like even as a middle manager, kind of we're all middle, even if you're the CEO, you're accountable to somebody. And so,
Sure, yeah.
So part of the idea is to instill through modeling and through encouraging and so on, the idea of each person being the CEO of their life. I'm in charge of my life. So a part of, and in the book called E-Myth, it talks about the E is an entrepreneurial myth.
Oh, okay.
And basically, the model is in the E-Myth manager, the author, Gerber is his name, but is that each person in the organization, there is the CEO of their own life, which doesn't mean that they have the same zeal as their CEO, but it means that my job in being in this organization is to serve the CEO. But if that isn't congruent with I'm CEO of my life, and I'm saying I'm serving the CEO, but it's killing me. Well, then that you're not being a good CEO any more than your CEO says, my board of directors tells me that I need to cut 90% of my workforce. Okay, well, I have to decide, is that what's going on inside of me? You know, so the idea is that each person takes responsibility for their own life in the same way that the CEO, and it starts with the CEO. I'm responsible for that, but it doesn't mean that so if you're in a situation where the CEO's whole thing is really counter to who you are and your ontology, how you're made and so on, then your job is not to bitch at the CEO, it's to take action yourself. But that may mean that you might lose your job. Okay, well now we got a problem here. Well, it's like my kids saying, Daddy, I really need you, I really want to play catch today. I don't have time. It's the cat in the cradle. I don't have time to play. Well, okay, when can we? Well, tomorrow. Well, tomorrow, I'm there with my glove and my ball. Well, I was going to, but I just got a call from the boss. And I got to go in. Okay. Well, when can we play catch? Monday. Okay, it's Monday. I'm there with the ball and the glove. Well, you know, I was going to, but so you see this along the way where it's taking responsibility. Now, when you're the little kid in that thing, it's mostly just a tragic thing. You know, so what are you going to do? How am I going to make my dad want to play catch with me? And so it's never just real slick and you just go push that button. And, but there are, again, some principles. You're looking at, for example, the research in worker satisfaction. I read a study on this not too long ago that was basically saying that people, in order to be satisfied in their work, desire and need to be, whatever they're doing, that 80% of what they're doing is what they're good at. And
It's like a competency and a purpose kind of thing. Yeah.
and so but yeah, the competence that, so if you're 80, let's just flip it. 80% of what you're doing is you're not good at.
Yeah, that's
Then you're not, you can still have your job and you may be doing it, but you're doing it and you hate it.
yeah,
And that scariest thing
Yeah.
comes in there.
for
You know,
sure.
it may be scary because I don't know how to do this. And I don't feel free to say I don't know how to do it. I think of my wife's situation where one of the things in her role, where her boss rarely, probably in this, I don't know them, but gives compliments, you know, to say, I noticed that you did this and that's really great. Or like when she was first starting, and she's, you know, people in my age group, a lot, I mean, I won't blame the whole world on me, but are very challenged when it comes to digital stuff. And it's really, like for me, as the CEO of my consulting, a lot of what has to happen is digital, but I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And if
Sure.
so I've got people that do know
Yeah.
how to do it. But if I'm going in on Monday morning, and I like everybody, so that's not the issue, but I'm not good. My job is to do something that I'm not good at, and I'm not only not good at it, the learning curve feels way too steep. Then I'm going to hate it. Well, how do you combat that? Well, number one is identifying it, and the manager or the leader asking. So there's a book called The 5 Love Languages. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
So my interpretation of that is, and I use in the consulting, is the 5, instead of just love languages, they're the 5 appreciation languages. So one of them may be that I want, so I give somebody a raise, and I to say I appreciate you.
Yeah.
But that's not their appreciation language. Their appreciation language is quality time. You know, you've given me a raise and I appreciate it, and you've always done bonuses and so on. But you know, I've been working here 20 years and you've never once had me to your house. Or we've never once just gone out for lunch.
Yeah.
And so it's not that I don't want the money, but what would really, or even the physical. The thing is, you know, appreciation may just be literally a pat on the back. To come up to, you know, say, good job, man.
Yeah.
Great. Wow.
Huh.
And so, but because we're ill-equipped in terms of recognizing the difference, so we tend to be like parents who think that you raise your kids because they're all in the same family, you raise them all the same.
Right.
They're different.
Yeah.
Little Joey loves to do this and he's good at it, but he hates this. Well, I don't care. We don't have time. I like baseball, so we're all going to play baseball. If you're the manager or the leader, know your people. In the biblical term of being a shepherd, a shepherd knows his sheep.
Yeah.
You know that this one does this and this one does that.
Yeah.
And that's where you see a culture that's modeled. And now you got people, and that's a progression. It's not just, okay, we had a workshop now.
Oh, it takes
boom,
so
boom.
much time.
Like you guys have seen in your company.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
it's a lot of effort.
it does.
A lot of
And there's a
intentionality.
lot of resistance because
yeah.
it feels like it's superfluous.
Well, you're inviting vulnerability,
Yep.
which for anybody is like,
Right.
wow, I don't want to be a part of that.
Creates
Like,
a new Sunday scare.
yeah. Yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
A healthy one, but at
Right.
times it's intimidating for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. I think just to wrap up, I one of the biggest takeaways, and I love that kind of like tagline, that motto of like, yeah, be the CEO of your life, because that plays a central part to this whole thing. How am I supposed to be able to lead in a way that would cultivate the culture that would minimize Sunday scaries if I'm not actively doing that in my own life? If I'm so worried about Sunday and I'm neglecting the time that I have on Sunday with very valuable people, how in the world am I supposed to come in on
Yep.
Monday and say, okay, everybody, we're going to create this culture that's minimizing Sunday scaries. You'll have no idea how to do it because you yourself haven't
Yeah.
walked through it. And so the CEO of your own life is such a great one-liner, but also a great model to kind of live by and
Well, if you
emulate.
think about Jesus' teaching he says that why do you don't notice, you notice the speck in your brother's eye, but you don't notice the log in your own.
Yeah.
That's the same principle.
Yeah.
We notice the speck in our employees or our fellow workers, but we don't recognize that we're carrying this big old timber around.
Yeah.
Everybody else sees it, but you don't. You
Yeah.
think the focus is on the little thing. But unless you deal with that, that's what he's saying.
Totally.
So take the log out of your own eye.
Yep. Lead yourself.
Right.
Yeah. So powerful. Appreciate the conversation, Tom.
You're
As always.
welcome. It's
It was
great being with you.
Yeah.
Let's keep plugging.
We'll keep going.
Yeah.